libertad, libertad, a los presos por luchar. Libertad, libertad, a los presos por luchar.
Welcome everybody to our event, and we want to thank our featured speaker for accepting our invitation and be part of this program. Argentina in the last 4 years have the record of receiving more loans from the IMF that perhaps any country in the world at this moment. Its foreign debt is at record levels, and it's run by a gang of capitalist neoliberal ultra-right or neo-fascist politicians that are trying to push back the hard-fought earned victories of the working class. So tonight, our speaker just participated in one of the biggest mobilizations in Argentina and perhaps in the region, which is the fight for preserve in public hands and salary raises and very good working conditions for workers. That's in the hospital Garragan. She is also a sociologist and a professor at the University of Buenos Aires. She is a member of the Aaociation Gremial Docente, which is it is, in fact, a professor's trade union. And she's also a militant and a member of the Partido Obrero, the Workers' Party in Argentina. And through, obviously, the decade and beyond, she has been participating in all the workers' mobilizations and struggles in the Argentinian Republic. Without any further ado, I want to introduce Comrade Maria Pelle. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ricardo. And yes, as you said, my name is Maria Pelle. I'm a professor at the University of Buenos Aires, and I'm a member of Professors Union Aaociation Gremial Docente, with which we have been involved for less than a year in one of the largest protests against Milei's government. All national universities, professors and students stood up last year and pushed for one of the largest marches in favor of free education in Argentina and against Milei's government. And I say we pushed because if there hadn't been grassroots organization, this march wouldn't have been so big. More than 1.5 million people demonstrated on that occasion in defense of public education. And although there were university takeovers after this march, they were lifted before the end of the year. And at the beginning of this year, although we organized various marches and strikes, we couldn't replicate yet the massive turnout of last year. This university struggle, which I will return to in a moment, expresses a little of what we have been experiencing in our country since Milei took office. There is a great willingness to fight on the part of the people who encounter obstacles and are unable to find a way out. And that is why it is important to think about how someone like Milei ended up governing Argentina. The fact that we have a president like Milei in Argentina took many by surprise. How can a guy like this, with this characteristic, be a president in Argentina? Not only because of the ideas he proclaims, but also because of the way he is. He looks like a child playing with a chainsaw. This shows an impressive decadence in the Argentinian political regime. Milei represents a real nightmare for Argentinian people. But it is important to understand that Milei did not come out of nowhere, as we say in Argentina. He is the result of decades of different policies and governments that have severely affected our country. Since 2023, poverty rates have grown exponentially in Argentina. And now it is not those who do not have jobs that are poor in our country, but those who do have jobs are poor. The erosion of wages has meant that a person who works 14 hours a day cannot make it ends meet. So we have a situation where workers are super exploited and very poor. So far, during his term, Milei has fired more than 30,000 public employees and cut fundings for higher education by approximately 32%, accompanied by a campaign to discredit higher education. He has strongly attacked independent organizations that run soup kitchens through a media smear campaign, calling them poverty managers, and through intense judicial persecution. We have our comrades from Polo Obrero, such as Chiquito Beliboni. I don't know if you heard of him, but who, along with other comrades, are facing a trial and could end up with prison sentences. In addition to this, the government froze food deliveries to soup kitchens and food banks for these organizations. The Secretariat of Human Capital had at least 6 million kilos of food stored in a warehouse with an expiry date approaching, which was a scandal. And when, under the pressure from organizations, they began to deliver it, they did so to NGOs and religious organizations. Therefore, it is clear that in addition to the cruelty of storing food in a country where there is hunger, the objective is to attack politically independent organizations, which are the ones that since the first day of Milei's inauguration have bravely faced his anti-popular measures. In addition to this, as you surely are aware, a decree was passed in December 2023 called Basis for the Reconstruction of the Argentine Economy, which severely modified working conditions with measures such as the extension of probationary period. This was an extended period from 3 to 8 months, allowing companies to evaluate employees for longer before offering a permanent contract. Also, the modification of severance pay based on seniority was replaced by an alternative employment termination system established in collective bargaining agreements. Also, the limitation on the right to strike. Sectors such as health, education, and transportation were considered essential services or vital importance, restricting the right to strike. Regularization of unregistered employment, like a labor laundering program, was established that allowed companies to formalize their unregistered employees with partial debt forgiveness depending on the size of the employer. This regulation eliminated the presumption of a dependent relationship in the hiring of services. Beyond these setbacks in labor rights, today, 43% of the workers in Argentina are informal. This is workers that are not registered, that have no labor rights, do not receive bonuses or pension contributions, and are not entitled to sick leave, for example. The growth of informal work in Argentina is a problem that has emerged and gradually grown since the last dictatorship in Argentina in 1976, which carried out a strong process of deindustrialization in the country. This was not reversed by any democratic government, but there has been a huge leap in the last 3 years. The situation for children also is catastrophic. Recently, the Catholic University of Argentina published a survey stating that 1 in 3 children in Argentina goes hungry. In addition to this, the government is strongly attacking public health. Right now, we are fighting against the closure of one of the most important children's hospitals in the country, as Ricardo said before, which has the best professionals of the highest quality, because education in Argentina is of the highest quality. That is why we have incredible professionals who are fighting today to prevent the closure of one of the best public and free hospitals for children in the country. It is Garrahan Hospital. And just yesterday, as he said, we held a huge march in defense of the hospital. This is a cruel government that attacks children and people with disabilities, and it does so through ignorance and insults. It mocks them. We also have the extremely serious situation of pensioners in our country. The minimum pension in Argentina is 330,000 pesos, when the basic family basket exceeds that figure. And food and medicines prices are rising every month. And rents, which in many cases older adults have to pay, are impossible to afford. Like 30 square meters, a 30 square meters apartment costs us over 500,000 pesos. This is a problem that also severely affects young people, as it does throughout the world. Adults aged 28, 30 have to continue living with their parents. Milei is also moving forward with the privatization of Argentinian trains, Trenes Argentinos, laying off thousands of railway workers and making the service increasingly precarious, so that in the eyes of users, privatization becomes a necessity, as it happens in the 90s. The same is happening with the Argentinian airline, Aerolíneas Argentinas, where workers are fighting against job insecurity and poor services. The government is also moving to dissolve state institutes that control and register products that are essential for the safety of workers and consumers, such as the INTI, the National Institute of Industrial Technology. And of course, it is also moving against the National Council of Scientific and Technical Research and Higher Education, particularly against public and free universities in Argentina, which have been a historical pillar of educational excellence in our country. And it is doing so through the funding of low salaries that force many professors to abandon their teaching jobs at the university and to take on multiple jobs in order to make ends meet, thereby lowering also academic quality. This is a government that prides itself on ignorance, that campaigns through fake news, that promotes the idea among young people that studying is useless because having money is what matters, and you can get it easily through a computer by gambling scams or by the cryptocurrencies. Of course, the reality of those who really profit from that is that there are very few of them, that they boast on their ignorance. And there are many sectors of young who, for example, about an event in history say, I didn't live it through, so I don't have to know about it. So there is a contempt for knowledge that is strongly promoted by the government and serves to keep people dominated. Now, what is the flip side of these serious attacks on the living conditions of the Argentinian working class? It is the enormous enrichment of a handful of businessmen. For example, Marcos Galperin is the head of a multinational company called Mercado Libre and Mercado Pago. he saw his wealth double compared to what he had in 2020. Hugo Sigman, the owner of a group called Insud, a business conglomerate with interest in fields such as pharmaceuticals and agribusiness, Alejandro Bulgoni, leader of Pan American Energy Group, Luis Perez Compan, the president of Molinos Rio de la Plata and Molinos Agro, and Paolo Roca, the owner of multinational Techin. These are the people that are getting very rich in Milei's government, and their profits, which have doubled in the last year, were acquired through the super exploitation and flexibilization of their workers. In other words, they are increasing their profits margins at the expense of super exploitation, and they are doing so in a context in which the world is undergoing a global capitalist crisis. Milei governs for them and attacks workers because the class he governs for demands greater profits at the expense of exploitation. And it demands this because capitalism is undergoing a global economic crisis. And deep economic crisis in capitalism turn into military clashes and confrontations in general, which is why we see all countries around the world increasing their military budgets. You see it in your own country, in the United States, with Donald Trump, right? Talking in the language of war, with his desire to annex Canada and his attack on Iran and the support he has for Israel. I was invited to speak about Milei and Argentina, but it is impossible to separate him from this general context in the world. Milei ultimately is a grotesque caricature of this chaotic dystopian context and the enormous decline of capitalism. He adopts an almost fanatical position in favor of the advance of capital against all human rights, which is why he so strongly defends the Zionist state of Israel and its genocide against Palestine. His authoritarianism, the strong repression of demonstrations, and the attack on democratic freedoms are all related to this. Now, why can Milei do all this in a country like Argentina? Here, sorry, I'm gonna take a little water sip. Here, there is a very important point that is absolutely essential to understand. The working population in Argentina is fighting. It is not that it's not fighting. It is fighting as best it can. I told you that we held a massive march against the defunding of public university, and that yesterday we held another very large march against the defunding of Children's Hospital. Every Wednesday, we gather at Congress because pensioners are fighting for their pensions, and they don't stop doing so, even though they are repressed every Wednesday. The problem is that the union's leadership, which is Peronist, refuses to carry out a plan of struggle because it knows that if the working class stands up in an organized way, Milei will fall, and Peronism does not want Milei to fall. Consider something very terrible that happened a few weeks ago. In light of corruption cases under Cristina Kirchner's administration, the government and the judiciary took advantage of the situation to move forward with her trial and bar her from running for office. She was going to run in the provincial elections that are just a few months away. This was a serious act of political prescription. We, who are not Peronists, we are from Partido Obrero, spoke out against this, against its ban, because regardless of whether there was corruption under Cristina's government, we believe that this was a political attack on her to avoid her from running for office. There was a massive demonstration outside Cristina's house by Peronist supporters. who are prepared to confront the government over all these attacks. A few days later, there was a huge rally in Plaza de Mayo against this attack on democratic freedoms. However, when Cristina spoke, she practically called on people to wait for the government to fall on its own, arguing that its base of economic stability, which is ultimately what sustains the government, would eventually collapse. And then she said, they will call on us. She said, on us Peronists. And who are they? The bourgeoisie. As it has happened at other times in history in Argentina, when the economic situation explodes, there is a social disorder as a result of that explosion, and the bourgeoisie calls on Peronism to restore order. And she's waiting for that. Cristina has said many times that labor reform is necessary in Argentina. Cristina has often attacked teachers and professors fighting for higher wages and public health workers fighting for higher wages and bigger budgets. Peronism discourse has shifted to the right. Our organization of unemployed workers is under attack right now, right? Today, that attack grew stronger with a trial that could send our comrades to prison, but it is also the result of a process of demonization of independent organizations by the state since the Cristina's administration and Peronism in general. I would like to take this opportunity to ask you for your international solidarity and economic collaboration, because we are doing this everywhere we can speak. We are running a fundraising campaign to cover the high costs of an unjust trial against us, which is a political attack. They are attacking us precisely because we organize independently for any power structure and finance ourselves in the same way. Therefore, I'll post a link in the chat for those who wants to help us. But returning to the subject at hand, the attack on those who fight has been going on for a long time. And today it is intensifying in chilling ways. We suffer systematic repression and aggression from the government. In addition to the banning of Cristina Kirchner, there is a repression of all forms of demonstrations. A few weeks ago, we had the case of a group of Peronist activists who went to protest outside the house of a libertarian congressman. His name is José Luis Espert. This congressman is a guy who called for jail or bullets to our comrade Belliboni and constantly encourages violence against social activists. Well, the activists who protested outside his house were detained for days, deprived of the rights, and reported that they were forced to reenact their arrest many times for the cameras, then made to strip naked and keep them in chains. It was terrible. So that's why we say that Milei's government is at war with Argentinian people. His economic plan, which today provides some stability, is very fragile because it maintains an artificial exchange rate. Foreign debt, as Steve said before, has skyrocketed to the point where it will be soon unpayable for us, and the investment never materialized. But we cannot let it collapse under its own weight, because every day of this government is another step backwards for workers and democratic freedoms in our country. Furthermore, if we do not begin to organize ourselves independently of the bourgeoisie parties, when the economic collapses in Argentina, it will be us, the workers, who will suffer. So we must ensure that the hardest blow is not felt by the workers. I'll end there. I hope it wasn't too long.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Conrad. It was
Thank you.
a definitely well, explained exposition, and we are very grateful. So we want to open it up for the period of questions and answers. Please limit your comments to 2-3 minutes, and those that are spoken first will not be able to ask a question after those that haven't asked. So without any further ado, let's open up for questions. Any questions?
There was a question in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'll read it. Last year, Labor Fest, your comrade who spoke said that Milei identifies as an anarcho-capitalist. I believe he said, I'm curious whether this misidentification as anarcho caused any confusion, where voters thought he was more left than right, more harmless than the fascist he really is. That's the first question for you.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting question. And but I don't think so, because his campaign was sustained about all about the necessity of capital to go free. So and the attack to the left all the time, and workers of the state, and he always tried as the lefties in his oppositions. And I think, young anarchists in Argentina are well studied. I mean, they know our history and know the history of anarchists in our country, which is very rich. So I don't think that was the case. That could have been the case, but he said in his campaign so many terrible things, like, well, attacking the leftists, of course, but also talking about, selling organs and kids, and talking about the free market in a way that could not be confused by the left, no, by anything like the left. What could have been confusing is that he tried to identify the left with the prior government and Kirchnerism. So many people, workers who were very tired, like I said, that the 43% of the workers in Argentina are unregistered. Well, that's something that has been growing through the years. So many workers never had any rights, and they were very tired of the government, the Peronists, talking about the rights when they didn't have any. So what did happen is that many of the working class voted for him, but not like not in a lefty way, but in a very annoyed way, like an angry way, I don't know if I could answer properly.
Okay, next is Carol. Carol, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your explanation about what's happening. And I have to say, the United States or Argentina mirrors the United States, or the United States mirrors Argentina. When you were talking, it was like, this is Trumpism, you know what I mean? But the way, I'm not sure that I fully understand or maybe I do. Maybe when you said the working class voted for him because they were angry at the Peronists, if that's what you meant, I don't want to, say something that you didn't.
Some of them, yeah.
But see, in the United States, a lot of working class people, I mean, it's not like Trump got the majority, but people are so disgusted with the Democratic Party in the United States.
Right.
This is really the fault of Trump. It's the fault not only of the Democratic Party, but of the left in the United States in general, because the largest organization, which is the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, are always jumping on the Democratic Party bandwagon. It doesn't matter what the person's politics are. The fact is that they're the Democratic Party. And so, the working class was disgusted with the sellouts of the Democratic Party. I don't have to tell you. I'm sure you're aware of Clinton and
Yeah.
Obama
Biden.
Biden massacring millions, thousands of. I mean, it's just so. I mean, all of Detroit, the whole Arab community in Detroit said we're not voting for him, and that was like 100,000 votes right over there. In any case, so I'm wondering if you would analyze the situation in Argentina in a similar way as we do in the United States. I mean, Trump is a fascist, right? So he has a lot of populisms, like we're going to clean the swamp, we're going to do all of this, the working class will do really well because we're going to cut taxes for the workers and blah, 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 which is all like bullshit and lies. But nevertheless, there was no counter voice essentially among the left or in the Democratic Party, and the people in the United Front Committee for a Labor Party are trying to build that kind of organization where we oppose the Democratic Party and try to organize or help organize mass movements in the United States. So I have a couple of questions. What is it?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have reached 3 minutes.
But let me just ask my question and then I'll shut up. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the strategy then of the Partido Obrero, and what do you want to do? What do you see yourself achieving? What's the end? How are you going about, doing all of that?
Yeah, I think it's very alike in a way of that people are disgusted by Peronists and the prior governments. But there is a slight, not very slight difference, because Trump has always talked about industry and American jobs. In Argentina, Milei is selling everything, and he didn't lie about it. So it's weird. The disgust on Peronism was so huge that he achieved to, make people to vote him, even though he said he was going to sell everything. Like the difference between like imperialist country like the United States and a semi-colonial country like Argentina. So that's interesting to think about. But also, in Argentina, Peronism, which is not from the left, Peronism is very capitalist. I think the DSI has it talks about against capitalism, even though it goes after, the Democratic Party, as you said. Peronism doesn't. Cristina has said many times that they support capitalism, that there is the best way to live, but their symbolism had absorbed the lefty fights for Argentina, like the fight against militaries in Argentina, or all the culture, the fight of women of the left, the green wave that we developed in Argentina, that was very huge. They take that discourse and converted. So the disgust to Peronism became a disgust to the left too. And also what Peronism did in all these years was to take that discourse, but also attack the real left, like this process of demonization that I talked about against Trotskyism, particularly Trotskyism and other left groups, was very strong under Peronism. It was like a gradual process of, of isolating us and trying to, I don't know, I hope I'm explaining myself well, but I'm trying to gather all the popular fights under their wing, but it is similar in the way of the discuss of, the use of symbolic fights and the fights for rights, like women rights and other type of rights that, governments took under discourse, but never materialized them really.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was
I'm
gonna
gonna go.
make some comments.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Thanks for your contribution. And I think it's very important that we, in the United States particularly, look at the lessons of Argentina for the working class here. And there are very many similar things because Trump's agenda, Project 2025, is a fascist program that probably Milei would like to implement as far as crushing, privatizing all public services, public education, and getting rid of democratic rights, setting up company unions. In my view, it's a fascist program, actually, and he's basically dispensing with bourgeois democracy in the United States, saying he's above the law, and he's actually doing more in some ways than even Milei has been able to get away with, which is quite interesting. But what I was going to say is that American imperialism has an ally in Argentina, and that is the AFL-CIO leadership, because there was a coup in Argentina, as well as Brazil and other countries, supported by the AFL-CIO and the Solidarity Center. And that, I think, is important for American workers to know about, because we've been in a struggle in the United States to break relations with the Solidarity Center, which is the AFL-CIO International Operations. It gets $70 million a year from the U.S. government and gets $1 billion. It's gotten over $1 billion in money for international operations. And of course, the AFL-CIO is also supporting the Histadrut, the Israeli Trade Union Federation. So maybe you can talk about those issues. The other thing is, I think that the United States is intent on reasserting the open face of U.S. imperialism. That's why the attack on Panama. And a lot of trade unions are in jail. There was a teacher strike just ended a couple of days ago in Panama, but they're trying to privatize the pension plan of the teachers in Panama and also develop the copper mines for U.S. capitalists. One of the things that I think is important for American workers and socialists is your development of a united left front. Because in the United States, there is no united left front. There's a lot of sectarianism, and there's not really a working class political alternative. There's a political vacuum, which is very dangerous. And maybe you can talk about how you see the working class organizing politically and fighting for power, because that is really what it's about. How are we going to take power? Are you prepared? And how you prepare to organize for that kind of action. Last point on healthcare. I mean, in the United States, as you know, Trump and the Congress, the insurrection Congress, have said they're going to get rid of Medicaid. They're privatizing Medicare. They want to privatize Social Security. And there's been no mobilization by the unions, even though there are going to be 500,000 healthcare workers that lose their jobs as a result of the shutdown of Medicaid. And we have been trying to build a united front against that. In California, he wants to crush California with Title I in public education, the NIH, which he's just laying off professors and researchers. So there's a frontal attack, and we're fighting in California for a general strike, and particularly against the raids the fascistic terror raids by ICE against workers. And maybe you can talk about how you organize against repression, because that is a very serious issue in the United States. They're trying to create a regime of terrorism and a society where people are afraid to mobilize because of the police apparatus. And they just passed a $130 billion budget to increase ICE, which is going to make it the largest police force in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let me read the
Yeah.
one that is on the chat.
Mhm.
KW asks, in the face of this continued assault, what sort of a real alliances have developed between revolutionaries, those who make up the FITU, and maybe anarchists? So could you please answer that question? And then
Yeah.
I'm calling, hold on 1 second, please. And
Yeah,
then
I'll
I'm
try.
calling. Go ahead, please.
I'll try to remember and try to structure. Um, well, on repression thing, sorry, but I got to think about it. We've learned something in Argentina. When mobilizations are huge, police cannot repress. And they are, of course, increasing the budgets of military and the police. And of course, they come with it. For example, yesterday we had a line of police officers and also the militaries. Everyone is there to repress us and try to make us fear. But whenever the mobilization is huge, they cannot do it. And also with very sensitive things such as education and health in Argentina, they really have to make a step backwards. They really cannot go so much forward as they do in other fields. So we are learning that. We are trying to talk to people, to students about that. If we are a lot, they're not going to repress us, and because that's what happens. But we do have our security, measures to take care of each other. About the FITU, the left in Argentina, the presence of the FITU is very important. It is really very important because there is a very left force there to talk to people. The only problem is that we don't agree in every step we take in class struggle. For example, in trade unions, which is the real important thing that we need to develop, because well, and we do a great effort to move together in class struggle, but this agreement that this political agreement that we have, it's very more political than in class struggle. There we have a little more problems, but we are on the same field, and that is very, very important. Anarchists in Argentina, unfortunately, they don't really exist really anymore. They don't intervene in class struggle. Is that is a reality. But FITU is very important as like a political pole of the left, and we really make efforts, all of us, to move forwards in the steps to be together in class struggle too. Now, what do we want to do, Partido Obrero? We think that Milei has to fall. I think that that this is one of the discussions we have in FITU. Every time the regime wants to make us talk about elections, that's what Peronism does. No, we confront the government in the elections, in next provincial elections, for example. And we strongly believe that the fight is on the streets, because that is where we are gonna, reinforce bonds with each other, with the vanguard, which is fighting. And in some cases, these fights are very massive. And we think we have to be on the streets. For example, when Cristina was proscripted, we encouraged to make takeovers in universities and go to marches. I think that's very important, and that's what's gonna, pave the way to make the working class every time stronger and stronger, because the fight we have ahead is a very huge one. The leaderships of the trade unions are really part of this Milei's plan. So this is we are from Partido Obrero, we are calling for a general strike. We fight for that in every union we are. For example, in university, we think that in this, when classes begin now in August, we have to start a strike. With no, no a day of strike, but it should be like a non-start of the elective period. I don't know how you call it, but we fight for this general strike. It's the most important thing to do. And it is hard in a way, but the situation is so fragile. I mean, really, the economic plan of Milei is so fragile that some people think that it's stable and it's going to go through everything he can. But the vision that we have is that in any time, everything is going to explode through the air. So we need to be on the streets organizing people. And that's the most important. And that's the discussion we have in FITU. And we're gonna make an agreement on this. We're gonna go through this because, the left in Argentina, despite the differences, which are very important differences, have like a history of working together in this kind of things, and that's what we work for. But we strongly believe that there has to be a general strike. That is a construction, that is a very strong construction that we have to do from grassroots, and also that Milei has to fall. Milei cannot keep on the government because really he is in war with people, and we have to stop him.
Okay, let me call myself. I got a couple of questions. One, it is how people react to some of the moves that the Milei government has made, as for example, in a country where is so much hunger and levels of poverty. Milei bought a series of American-made F-16 fighter bombers from Denmark with American approval. And recently, he also bought a shipment of used weapons from Chile, which people thought it was crazy and ridiculous. So that's one question. You mentioned some of the setbacks and attacks that the Milei government have done against the working class, but also there has been some fightbacks that have had some moderate success, as for example, Milei decreed a decree of urgency and urgency, BNU. And, the Partido Obrero challenged that in the first a few months after he was elected, and, have been pushed this intent of prohibiting public manifestations, concentrations, marches. I would like you to talk about that. Also, there are some workers' organizations like in Bridgestone that I think is led by Alejandro Crespo, one of the most militant trade unionists in Argentina, which they have been fighting more or less with, certain success maybe. That's number two. And Steve mentioned about, Milei doing Trump, work and in an alliance, but I'm gonna ask you in concrete terms. Milei has joined ridiculously Trump in supporting Israel and American airstrikes against the Republic of Iran, and now, unfortunately, Iran has declared Argentina as an enemy country. It was published in the international press. Communications from Iran Foreign Ministry. So that's number two. And last but not least, there is a case that keeps coming back in Argentina, which is the Nisman case, which Nisman was a prosecutor that was supposedly investigating the relationship and the supposedly cover up of an attack of a Jewish organization in Buenos Aires. And it was discovered that Nisman had communications with the American intelligence services. And, it's a very complicated case. And, people are blaming each other for his death. And last but not least, I see that there are some cracks in the Argentinian government. The vice president of Argentina, which is a right winger, she supported Jorge Rafael Videla as the last, the first dictator and butcher of Argentinian workers. She's fighting with Milei. Milei called her a traitor. That's very curious that a president and a vice president are fighting publicly, openly, calling each other names. So I'm gonna leave it like that at that. So any other questions for people that haven't asked? Actually, I would like to recognize Dr. Brian Cuova, professor of the University of Tennessee, that has joined us, and he recently published a book about Hubert Harrison. So, I just want to recognize him. I'm very glad that he joined us.
Thank you for inviting me, Ricardo. I'm just here to listen primarily, but yeah, appreciate the conversation.
You want to ask a question?
I missed the first part of the meeting, so I feel a bit out of the loop. But my question when I think about Venezuela is often, to what extent is the Milei regime a window into the future of the United States, both in the sense of just the extreme right-wing policies that Milei is pursuing, some of which seem to be kind of test cases for what Trump can get away with here in the US, but then also, of course, the resistance, the workers' movement, the opposition to Milei, the mass marches. I think all of that also seems to be one possible future for where things are headed here. So I'm curious, what people make of that, or what lessons people are drawing out from the Argentinian experience for those of us doing this work in the US.
Okay. A lot of questions. I'm not sure I'm gonna remember all of them. I hope I do. First, yeah, about our organization. It was, as you said before, I think, Ricardo, we, from the first month that Milei took office, we went on the streets, and it was a very important step to make people understand that we didn't have to be afraid of this government, and we were going to go on the streets anyhow, anyway. And it was a very important thing because SUDNA, the trade union you mentioned, also was there, and Polo Obrero, and we were all there. And we convinced the rest of the left of FITU to go on the street because it was very important to show that we were not going to be afraid of this government. Milei, I think when I think about Milei, as I said, the economic plan is so fragile, so it's going to make abrupt movements in different ways. Regarding the vice president here, which is a defender of Videla and last dictatorship and all kinds of genocides around the world, that's interesting because, she's starting to talk with the right side of Peronism. They are preparing a way out because they know things are going to collapse somehow and any soon. So they're doing their talks. Today I was listening to the radio, and this journalist said that almost 130 members of the government had left the government since it began. And this is the second year of Milei. So everything is very fragile. Even when you talk about the alliances with Trump and with Israel, the alliances that Milei is, I don't see them as alliances. He's just, selling the country, leaving the country for the will of the United States and Israel companies. For example, now the water in Argentina is at licitation, and probably a company from Israel state is going to take over it. The alliances between them are very strong, but the situation in the world is so fragile that I don't know how this is going to end. Because, for example, I'm sure you remember that Milei went on elections against Massa, the Peronist candidate, and Massa also is a supporter of Israel state and the United States. The discourse of every one of them has shifted so to the right that, even though this is like a grotesque expression of all of these agreements with the United States and Israel, Peronism is also on that. And that's why it's so important to organize the fight from the grassroots, as I said. And here is another question. I am relating this to this other question in the chat. Should not the ruling class fall as well? Yes, of course, because ultimately the problem is capitalism. And Peronism does not take over office now because they don't have a plan, because they believe that what Milei is doing has to be done. So it's better that if Milei does it, and then we take over and restore a few things. So that's why we fight for a grassroots organization of workers and an independent way out of the workers. There is no way that we're going to be okay if the workers don't take over, and ruling class should fall too, because they are governing for the ruling class. This is all a plan from the ruling class, and they had the good luck to have this kind of monster freak winning the elections in Argentina. I'm sure if I get forgetting a few other questions, I'm sorry, it's a little late in Argentina. remind me if I didn't answer something. Oh, Nisman, the Nisman case. Like the like many things in Argentina has never been solved, but people are not talking about that because I don't know, I'm sure it happens also in the United States. There is such so many going on in the head of the people, they're working so much, and then they see the media and the social networks, and everything is like a bombing of information. People are not thinking about Nisman as it's part of one of the problems of corruption and disorder of the Argentinian regime. But that's not what the working class has in mind. What working class has in mind at the moment is how to get ends meet, and try to put a plate of food in the table every day. It's really, they got us in a situation where we are exhausted from working. That's why it's very important, a grassroots organization, really, and that assemblies and the ways that we can meet each other and, settle strong bonds between each other and try to canalize this in a popular organization. That's what we fight for. And definitely, yeah, the problem is the ruling class.
Yeah, I remind you part of what I said. One of the questions was Milei's buying military equipment at billions of
Oh, yeah.
dollars use
Yeah.
and not worth it.
Yeah. No, of course, they're not worth it. They don't, they're not worth it. You cannot use, they are like a very old technology, right? So people know about this, and journalists, put this on the table, and the left put this on the table, and even Peronism does it. But and also he's like cutting funds for every, you know, for every field regarding health and education, and he's increasing the funds for intelligence in Argentina. I don't know how they call it, like the CIA, but in Argentina it's called the CIDE. And so it's very obvious what he's doing. Police is very well equipped, and the army too, and people are hungry. This is a contrast that at some point is going to explode in the face of them, because people are going to fight against this.
Okay, Steve, how much time we have?
We have another half an hour. So,
Okay.
one of the things that I think we are concerned about in the United States is the rise of fascism. And as I was saying earlier, you have a fascist, techno-fascist billionaires who are in charge of the US government. In fact, Musk was in Argentina trying to get the lithium. But I think that the rise of fascism, not just in the United States, in Italy, in many other countries, France, and Germany with the AfD, is a real threat. And we see the need for a united front against fascism in the working class. And one of the problems is that the left in the United States is not at all prepared for fascism. A lot of the left don't even think we have a fascist government. And a lot of the left, particularly DSA, think there's going to be midterms election. And our view is that Trump now is losing support among the working class. Even some of his supporters are breaking from him. So there is the likelihood that he's going to try to do a Reichstag incident and prevent having elections in the midterm. So we don't really think that an election solution is going to be what we're facing immediately. And the need for a united front against the fascist movement and against a martial law in the United States is, I think, getting closer and closer. So in Argentina, I know Milei would like to have that situation. He doesn't as yet because there's a mass working class opposition. But as yet in the United States, as you know, that the unions, there's no mobilization of the unions nationally against these attacks. There have been no mass worker demonstrations because the trade union bureaucracy is still tied to the Democrats, and they're afraid of mobilizing the working class independently. So what's your thought about the rise of fascism and the danger of even a military coup in Argentina, because the United States would like to, if need be, overthrow the government and have a military government set up. And I think that that's what he's saying more and more internationally.
Yeah, you know, that's very interesting to think about because, I mean, he's a fascist, but this is not fascism in the way that, first of all, people are on the streets fighting and gathering, even though we get repressed. But for other thing that I think is most important, that Milei is doing this with democratic tools. You know, he's doing this. Everything he does it with other democratic parties supporting him. You know, it's like that's very desperating for us because it would be easier if there was a huge front of people and different democratic parties confronting him, but they're not doing so. In Argentina, we had a very strong dictatorship, as you know, in 1976. And they really did all the work. And then democratic governments helped out with all the modification of Argentinian economic structure. And they could do it with the tools of democracy. So now we have a step forward for an authoritism, but he doesn't need the militaries. He has the whole democratic institutions with him. People are the only one who are fighting Milei at the moment. So you know, here in Argentina, who really all the time talk about fascism is Peronism, but they don't go on the streets against him. I mean, they don't call it the leaderships, no, because I think the basis, the supporters of Peronists would like to go on the streets, but the leaders don't call them on the streets. Because really, I think it really has to do with capitalist crisis, and they understand that they need what Milei is doing must be done in Argentina. It's a very interesting discussion, though. You know, we could go for a long time with this.
Okay. I'm calling myself, you know, I'm going to make a comment. Actually, Milei last week or a week and a half ago, something like that, suffered a defeat in parliament, in the Senate. They, you know, even people that has sympathies for his government and allies of his government, they voted to raise the salaries of retirees, which he hated, and he refused to do all alone. And he has pledged that he would, you know, fight this in the courts. I don't want to give any bad idea for people to think that that race for the jubilados, the retirees, happened because of the goodness of the bourgeois parties, but certainly it was because of the struggles of the retirees that they picket every Wednesday in the Argentinian Republic with the support of working class organizations. So, you know, Milei is far from defeating the working class organizations. I mean, that those are evidence. And actually, even governors that initially supported him are kind of splitting with him on this question, because they know that the Argentinian working class will continue responding to this. So if he ever had a fascist agenda, he's not able to implement it, even though that he himself has fascist ideas. But in that regard, I want to say that recently in Spain, there was a pogrom in a town led by the right-wing party called Vox. They did attack immigrants and blame people, of crimes, etc. In Argentina, this is my, summarizing this sentence will be, the last of this question. I see that there is a rise of anti-immigrant sentiment in Argentina. Milei has tried to, before and historically, education in Argentina for foreigners and medical treatment was for free or has been for free, no charge. And Milei is trying to reverse that. He's trying to, him and his Minister of Security, a woman hated by most of the working class called Patricia Bullrich, which her husband is an arms dealer, and a pro-Israeli arms dealer. So, how the working class is fighting, the leftist organizations against this backlash against immigrants.
Well, first, I think it's very interesting what you say about what was voted in Senate last week. It's true that Milei cannot go forward with everything he has in mind, because now they are starting to appear like bad numbers in economy. And, bourgeoisie parties are not stupid. They're not, they know it's gonna fall sometimes, and they have to, put themselves in a good place when that happens. So I think that's why they voted for that misery rise. It was like a bonus, really, for pensioners, and also because of the fight of the people, of course, always, and it's very important. But also because we had the news that the JP Morgan said that Argentina wasn't credible anymore, and investments that Milei has always talked about never came. So everything is like in a very fragile step, like floor. And about the other thing that you said, what was the last thing that you said? I'm sorry.
The immigrants.
The immigrants, right? Sorry. Yeah. Well, yeah, we had the deportation of a Uruguayan comrade 2 days ago, and they are moving forward for that. First of all, in healthcare, but that's weird. It's weird because the campaign that Milei takes against immigrants, it's really like an ideological thing, because immigrants had to pay a bonus to be attended in hospitals and also at the university. So that's why like symbolism has like a huge importance in this era. Some of the things that Milei says is gonna do are already going on in Argentina from a few years ago. But of course, this discourse against immigrants, it's like he's trying to gather like a right. For example, yesterday I saw a picture of a right organization, a new right organization called Fuerzas del Cielo. I think that he says a very mystic and a religious thing. He says like a force of heaven, and there were like 5 people in the picture. I mean, and every time they want to go on the street, they tried last year. Above all, they tried to go on the streets and, you know, insult people that was protesting. They had to run from the people. And that's very important to say, because they cannot talk as loud as we think they can, you know? They have to run. And that's very, you know, I'm proud of that. So what he did for the immigrants thing is that he had this new decree against immigrants, which you can deport them if they don't work, or if they don't, you know, if they do any crime. It's just started. It was a few days ago. And of course, many of the popular organizations have a lot of immigrants. We are made of immigrants in this country. So we're gonna fight that a lot. We have Bolivians, Uruguayans, bueno, Venezuelan people, people from Venezuela that are very, very from the right side, and they are not deported. They are not attacked by this government. And that's very funny. Also, sorry, it's not funny. I mean, it's like a very ideological thing. Also, Milei, among with this decree against immigrants, he started to like pave the way for Israel, people from Israel to come to Argentina and settle in Argentina. So yeah, that's awful. But it's a really new thing, so we have to talk about it. I know that Polo Obrero, our organization of employees, are discussing this a lot, but this has been a few days ago.
Okay, we have a couple minutes. Any more questions? One, two, three.
Maybe Maria, you can talk about the international conference that you had, your international work, building support internationally.
Yeah, well, we have the international conference in Naples.
Naples, yeah.
Naples. Yeah, it was a very interesting gathering of international organizations. It's very important, I think, because we have like a very strong principle against the position of the left regarding the war the Ukraine war and what's happening in Palestine and the genocide. I think it's a very important process of discussion. I don't know how you guys see it, because you were part of it too, right? But I think it's like a very important step forward, the gathering of revolutionary organizations that are starting to, you know, like conflude, like converge in different positions from different places of the war, understanding the importance of independent positions of the working class in the fight against the ruling class. And really, I think it's a very important process going on. How do you see it, Steve? You were there, right?
We need to unite the working class internationally.
Yeah.
Very important. I mean, what is going on now with U.S. imperialism, militarization? Trump is demanding that Europe militarize, and that Japan and Korea militarize. So they're driving towards world war, is what's happening.
Yeah.
And that historically is a solution for the crisis of capitalism and imperialism, world war. And that's where we're going right now. So we do have to have a united front internationally against imperialist war, against the genocide in Gaza, and also for labor action, for worker action. I know our friends and comrades in Greece supported a big action at Piraeus, the port of Piraeus yesterday, the day
Yeah.
before yesterday, where they blocked cargo to Israel. And the dock workers unions, thousands of people went to the port of Piraeus and they stopped the transfer. We need that in the United States, and we need that all over the world. Direct action by the working class to stop arms and economic support for Israel. So that's very important. That's a possibility of a united front globally of workers in every country of the world. I mean, as we all know, the capitalists are not going to stop war. They profit from war.
Mhm.
And they're driven to war. And I think the United States, as a declining imperialist empire, is becoming more and more adventurous. It can't compete against China, and that's why it's trying to surround China and go to war with China as well as Russia. So it's a very dangerous situation, and the need for a united front of workers' organizations around the world is critical.
Absolutely.
Okay. We got 4 minutes, and Maria has expressed that she is kind of tired. It's 10:26 in Buenos Aires. So you want to wrap it up in these last minutes?
No, I really want to thank you guys for the opportunity to talk to you. It's it's the first time I give like a chat in English, so I'm sorry for the some inconveniences. I hope I made myself clear. And it's always very nice to talk to comrades of other countries because as Steve said, like the unity of workers around the world is very important, very important. And being able to, listen to other experiences in other worlds makes us feel not alone, first of all, and second of all, part of the same class, right? Part of the same suffering and the same need to, make the ruling class fall and we workers take power on this because humanity is in danger as we are heading to the Third World War. So that's all I have to say. And if anyone wants to collaborate with us, please do so.